I would like to ask our chaplain, Matt Gibson, to open our meeting with prayer. Please, Matt.
Yes. Lord, we are grateful for this day and the opportunity to sit around these tables and stand in this room and share our hearts, Father, the ways that you have encountered us in some of life's darkest moments. And we ask, Father, for your grace to be upon this meeting. Those who speak today, Father, may they be a clear mind, a clear heart, and may they really express to us the joy, the help that hospice brought in such a dark time. And for those listening, Father, I pray for open ears and open minds. And for all of us, Father, we give ourselves to you, that your will be done. In Christ's name we pray.
Amen. Thank you. I would like to open this. My name is Connie Gannon. I'm the nurse practitioner here at Jordan's Crossing Hospice. Before we actually go around and do the introductions, I'd like to give you all a brief background on what prompted this meeting today. As the providers here in the room are aware, on December the 14th of 2012, DHH announced.
I'm sorry, I apologize. Could you move around front?
Oh, okay.
Sorry. You don't get back here, please.
I'll come down here and stand by Colonel Cox.
Okay.
Anyway, as I was saying, we know that DHH announced budget cuts. They're projecting to save $3.3 million in fiscal year 2013, and they think that eliminating the Medicaid Hospice Benefit will save them $10.3 million in fiscal year 2014. Various press releases and statements issued from the governor's office and DHH give the rationale for these cuts as being 90% of Medicaid or hospice patients have dual Medicare and Medicaid coverage. They're elder and they're already in the nursing home. However, we in the hospice community know that this is not right. The other 10% are Medicaid-only patients, and these are people that are too young for Medicare. These are children. These are previously productive, working, middle-class people that wind up with Medicaid because they lose their employer health-provided insurance. As an RN and a nurse practitioner, the patient advocate in me, and Nell can attest to this, I knew that we couldn't just idly sit by and let this 10% become collateral damage. We have to put faces to the numbers. The hospice community has to band together to try to get this corrected. The first person that I called when I saw this coming down was Representative Kenny Cox. He has long been a champion of helping the medically needy and underserved. And he graciously agreed to come and meet with our staff and some of our patient families and anybody else that chose to provide him with information so that he can go back to the legislature on April the 8th armed with facts and figures to help us correct this.
We also have Representative Burrell here.
And we're glad that you're here.
And I'm glad he's here too. Because he's been there for, since the beginning, right?
Yeah, since the beginning of the legislature.
Well, my name is Surya Park. I'm the marketing and PR person here at Jordan's Crossing Hospice. And we have joined forces. Also, we're members of the Louisiana Mississippi Hospice Palliative Care Organization. And so we are going to cover the northwest region of the state along with a multitude of other people. And we're excited about it. And there's some booklets that are here that I've passed out. Within this booklet, you'll see information on the next step. The next step of this campaign will lead to us being a part of the Candlelight Vigil. It's going to be held in Baton Rouge on January the 23rd. We're going to start about 4 p.m. And the reason why we state that is because as we all know, Baton Rouge can be a little bit tricky traveling. The actual starting time is gonna be 4:30. So we plan on being at the state capitol on January the 23rd at about 4:30. We expect everyone else to be there about 4. And so we're gonna actually turn it over to our medical director, Dr. Larry Daniels.
Well, I wasn't prepared to say anything formally, however, I appreciate everybody coming. We do have a big need for us to get together in order to support our patients, support our community, and serve our community and serve our patients. So I appreciate all of the people that are here, all the representatives from all the hospice and all of the supporting agencies that serve our local hospice patients in our local community. Representative Cox and Representative Burrell, I've worked with Representative Burrell in several different venues in the past. I know he's going to be supported. Along Cox, I know he's working with one of the hospice that has been very effective in serving our patients. So what I want to say is that we as a caring, Christian, caring group of people, we want to make sure that our patients have the type of understanding and support that they need. We want to convey our love, convey the love of God and Jesus to our patients by serving them in their time of need. And we know that the emotional and psychological needs of our patients and our the family members is well served by what we do. And we know that we have to stand up and be ready to answer these challenges that we're facing. And we want to stand with our patients, we want to stand with our community to provide the services they need. And so with that, I just welcome everybody and thank you for coming.
Well, we'd like to introduce you to some of our prior family members. It's Lisa Garvey and Lori Harris. Either one of y'all care to go first?
Let me get you to stand up, please, Morris.
So I just don't mind that I could talk all day about my son and his story, so I've written something to read. That's okay, just to get it all out there. My name is Laurie Harris, and my son, Odie Harris, was diagnosed May of 2010 with terminal liver cancer. Doctors managed to fight it off and shrink his football-sized tumors with chemo and experimental treatments for 10 months before they finally introduced the idea of hospice care. The thought of having to put my 13-year-old son on hospice care was terrifying. Just, we all, it has a stigma, you know. But at such a horrifying time in our lives, hospice offered us the opportunity to honor Odie's wish to just be at home. We had traveled back and forth between home and St. Jude's in Memphis every 21 days for 10 months for indefinite stays each trip. So our time at home was precious. Hang on a minute. Our little bit of time at home was precious, and lots of times between trips, Odie would have to be admitted to the local hospital for various reasons. Fevers, a lot, it happened a lot. He just wanted to be home. And in the end, hospice made that possible for us. Jordan's Crossing ended up being so much more than at-home medical care. They instantly became key players in our day-to-day life with cancer. They were always there whenever Odie needed anything that might make life for him inside that moment easier somehow. That's what hospice does. I had no idea what to expect. I was thinking it might be complicated. Scheduling anything was not something that life with Odie's kind of cancer allowed. But they knew that before I had to explain or make excuses, they were prepared to become part of Odie's schedule instead of the other way around, because that's how hospice works. It wasn't like having all these different people in and out of my house all the time. We had our own little team of people. Such a unique team of special people. Odie loved that his nurse was a dude, and such a cool dude. And he and his chaplain, Matt, became fast buddies. We ended up asking Matt to speak at Odie's funeral service. And you could tell when he spoke that he had truly come to love my son. They all had. Before, I always thought of hospice as end-of-life care. Now I see it completely differently. In my experience, they are about making the best of precious, fleeting moments in a life that still matters. When someone comes home to die, that is a very profoundly sad thing. Now imagine the kind of people that choose to spend their lives making that profoundly sad thing as comfortable and as beautiful as possible for these weary souls. That's what hospice does. I'm here today hoping to be a voice for others out there, men, women, and young children who may one day need what hospice offers. Thank you for hearing me out. And can I just add, in my experience, I know I've met a community of people going through the same things I go through. And for the time you need hospice, you've been through a lengthy illness, your money's gone. You know, there's just no, you don't save up for hospice care. And I didn't work for a year, their patients have no money, the caregivers have no money, and I don't know what I'd have done without our team. So you have to do everything you can.
Let me tell you, I can't do anything right now, but you know what? Let me give you a hug.
Oh.
Because I know this is gonna be really, really painful. My brother does this all the time. I don't know how I can.
Thank you.
This is tough.
Thank you for letting me
Thank
tell
you
my
for saying
story.
that.
Thank you.
I appreciate
Thank you very much.
Yeah, encourage you
And this is Lisa. Tell your story.
I'm Lisa Garvey, and my one-time boyfriend, but lifetime friend, Brian Harrison, who is better known as Flintstone on 98 Rocks in Shreveport and also 99X. He was very active throughout his whole life, worked hard all his whole life. I'm sorry. And, he worked hard his whole life. He's done a lot to give back to the community. He spearheaded the creation and design of the Clyde Stoner Bike Trail and also the Stoner Disc Golf Course. Plus, he's designed several other disc golf courses in the state. In May of 2012, he found out that he had stage 4 lung cancer that had already moved into his adrenal glands, his bones, and his brain. He was lost. He all of a sudden found himself unable to work, unable to support himself. He had to go on disability. He had no insurance because when he had to quit working, he wasn't able to work, so he lost his insurance. That night that he found out that he had cancer, I was there with him in the hospital room at LSU, and I made a promise to him that I would not let him face this alone. And I kept my promise, but he was not going to give up without a fight. And I had talked to him about hospice, and because of the fact that he was so full of life and not willing to give that life up, he was very loath to the idea of hospice because he thought that it meant, you know, the end. He finally got sick enough to where he was unable to take care of himself at all, and he moved in with me. I took a bunch of time off of work. I started a Facebook page called the Flintstone Foundation and tried to raise money, as much money as we could, to help offset the cost of his care and his medical supplies. But it just wasn't enough. And thank God for Jordan's Crossing Hospice. They met with us several weeks before he actually went on service. And when he finally went on hospice service, they just came in and enveloped us with love. And it wasn't just delivering a hospital bed or the medications that he needed. It was also the pastoral care, the spiritual support, and the emotional support. And he was very lost. He had no idea what he was facing, and if it hadn't been for hospice and Medicaid covering the cost of his care, what would he have done? What happens to people like Brian, who've worked all of their lives and have given back so much to the community, and at such a young age find out that they have a devastating terminal illness and no way to take care of themselves? It's tragic, and I shudder to think about what would have happened to him had he not had the support of Medicaid for his hospice. He was only on service for 3 days. he was only on hospice for 3 whole days. And that just goes to show that it's not as if these patients are going to burden the Medicaid system for very long. And it doesn't make any sense to take away and throw away these 10% of the population as collateral damage, as Connie said. So I'm asking you to please do what we can, and let's all band together and try to get this reversed. Because people like Brian and people like Odie, they would be the 10% that the state would be throwing away. And I appreciate y'all listening to my story, and thank you so much for being here today, and thank you all.
Thank you, we appreciate it.
I have one patient story that I would like to share, because she's no longer with us and her family was unable to come. My best friend, Faith Register, was a very young, vibrant RN, 40 years old, diagnosed with breast cancer. She was director of nurses at a nursing home in Mansfield. She underwent surgery, she underwent chemotherapy, she underwent radiation. She worked throughout this ordeal. She worked as long as she could. She ultimately, the treatments took their toll. She was unable to work. She lost the health insurance through the employer, signed up for Medicaid in order to continue her treatments. She fought. They told her she had beat it. At her 4-year checkup, they discovered that she had not beat it. It had metastasized to the lung, the liver, and the bone. She tried the chemotherapy again. She was violently allergic to the different drugs that they tried. And the oncologist at LSU told her, baby, it's time to go home and let hospice take care of you. So she did. She was with a hospice out of Manning. I can't recall the name of it. The hospice came in, like you said, equipment, everything that they needed, taught the family how to take care of her. She managed to stay at home until the end stages. Faith did not want to die at home. She did not want to leave her young children with bad memories. We managed to get her admitted to Grace Home in March of 2002, where she stayed until she died June 22nd of 2002. Faith is another one. She's another one in that 10%. I just can't let these people be collateral damage.
Okay.
Appreciate that, thank you so much. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on behalf of the organization or an individual?
My name is Neil Norwood. I run a hospice in Mansfield Superior Hospice. I'm going to tell you about a patient, a 42-year-old male who, just like all these other people, worked all their lives and everything, come down with cancer, used up all his health care cancer coverage, so they sent him to LSU, 42 years old. LSU said, that's it, there's nothing we can do. They sent, and what's really, you need to understand how these patients are sent home. Our patient, they had surgery to try to remove some of the tumors from the stomach. They cut him from here to the pubic bone. Well, he had so many tumors in his stomach that incision burst open. It burst open. And of course, I would not even talk about the odor, but also in his treatment journey, he had 2 colostomies. He also had 2 fistulas. Now, everybody is saying when they stopped this and the governor put out this stuff, I wrote a letter to the governor, saying how horrible this was. and to just come with me and see what these people go through. And let them know. Well, I'm gonna tell y'all something. Do y'all know what hospice is? I mean, what we do, what we supply to a patient. The equipment, the medication, social worker, chaplain, okay. And like I was telling some of the other people here, everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die to get there. Well, it's not about the dying, it's how you die that makes a world of difference. They say that nursing home patients shouldn't get hospice. Oh my God, who needs you more? Now let me tell you something. My letter of reply from the governor was from a Miss Huff. I got your copy. Miss Huff told me that people in nursing home didn't need hospice because they got some form of care. Y'all, some form of care. They like to kill me. I couldn't understand, I couldn't believe it. But let me tell you something. That form of care is one nurse taking care of 30 to 40 people. At 7 o'clock in the morning, she starts passing out those meds, and when she gets her morning medicines done, then she starts on her noon. They have an aide on one hall, one aide, to take care of 30 to 40 people. How much care do you think they get? How much care? A patient in the nursing home is changed once every 8 hours. Whether that's urine or feces, they get to lay there for 8 hours without being changed. That's your nursing home care. Nursing homes cannot get the medication those patients need. Everybody's saying home health. What do you think home health's gonna do? A Medicaid home health patient gets 52 visits a year. 52 visits a year. In those 52 visits, 3 of them, you can have 3 emergency room visits. The rest, any doctor's visits that you need are gonna be taken out of those 52. You're gonna see a home health nurse about once a week. And guess what? You're not gonna get an aide. Aide takes part of that 50, those visits. So as I tried to explain to Ms. Huff when I wrote her back and had to tell her, you don't know what you're talking about, come with me and let's go to these places and see what decisions you're making so you can make an intelligent decision. Come and see what these poor souls are going through. And they have been doomed to a terrible and horrible death by the government. Another thing, home health. They can't get you morphine. They can't get you Ativan. So what's going to happen? What's going to happen? Instead of them calling the hospice nurse and us going out there and taking care of that patient, getting that family prepared for that impending death. They're not going to call us, they're going to call 911. They're going to the emergency room. And let's see, ooh, that's a couple $1,000s. And then they're going to be admitted into the hospital. Thousands and thousands of dollars.
22,000 plus.
Okay. An admit, per admit,
Process.
okay? Now, they're gonna get them ready, they're gonna give them fluids, they're gonna pump him back up, and they're gonna send him back home. And a week later, we're gonna do the same thing. So this measly, it's less than $135 a day. The hospice gets paid. You cannot compare that with the cost of a hospital bill. They're not going to counsel that family. They're not going to sit there and hold that family's hand. People are too busy nowadays. But it's just, I can understand another human being could actually expect another human being to die in this manner. It's ungodly and cruel and mean. And this is what we've gotten to. And it's terrible. And it's not going to save money. It's going to cost the taxpayers even more money. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me mention real quickly here, and we'll pass it on to the representatives so they can share their perspective. I wanted to be clear that, first of all, I'm Jerome Cox, I co-owner of St. Joseph Hospice in Shreveport. But here's the unique part about this process is that Kenny and Roy, they're very engaged when it comes to hospice. I've been working in this business for about 17 years. We lost our brother at the age of 37, so it's very personal to us. So I'm grateful to have his ear, and you'll hear Representative Burrell's story when he's been there. When you've been in the midst of the storm
Yes.
of hospice, your palate, your taste for what it stands for, you understand it. It's very subjective and easy to observe something and look from a perspective which you have minimum experience with. Now, we know that our legislators and our governors, they're very smart, they're wise people. They've been elected by the citizens. But I think at the end of the day, we've got to look at the big picture and how does this work economically for our state. We know that there's been some decisions made about money in this, but the fact of the matter is, when we do the research and we hear all of the information, I think the conclusion will be that there's going to be a great deal of money saved for our constituents abroad. If you have not tasted the pain of losing someone, you really don't understand it. I have a friend right now who's on our, he's 59 years old. He's a very good friend of mine. We've worked together for, gosh, years and years, 20 years plus. I like to call myself a so-called builder. I asked him to come over and help me build a deck one day. This is, mind you, this is 4 weeks ago. And as we were building the deck, he began to get lazy on me, and I began to harass him and pick on him, and I noticed his fatigue was unusual. So he would sit, he would help, he would sit, he would help. So finally I asked him, what's wrong? What's happening here? He said, I'm having a problem breathing. And it became more labored and more labored. So finally I just decided, we probably should go to the emergency room. We get to the emergency room, and guess what we find out? He's 59 years old. He's worked hard. He's in this great realm of life. He's excited about the remainder of his life. And that day, and thereafter, we learned that he had stage 4 lung cancer. He's not a smoker. He doesn't have all these other comorbidities or any of those things. Well, he couldn't work. So when you can't work, you lose your benefits. And when you lose your benefits, you have to rely on what? Medicaid.
That's it.
No Medicaid, no care. Now, this organization and many hospices across our city and throughout the state, believe it or not, give an enormous amount of care that they're never reimbursed for. I can guarantee it. I know this organization has done it. And so I guess the concern is, are we going to go ahead and I've never turned a patient down for lack of money. In all of my years of never. This organization is one of those organizations. So what you ask yourself is, do we now take on all of this burden? I think the burden should be shared. I think we should share the burden with the state. If that happens, then everybody benefits. So I wanted to preface that before the representative, because sometimes you wonder, that's why they're so passionate about hospice. They know about it. They've been there. They've lived it. And as my brother would say all the time, he says, I just wouldn't live your life and do what you do for anything in the world. Because we have these people, and I think about that gentleman, and he wouldn't, and I asked him if I could say, I asked Mr. King, I said, he says, what are we going to do now? He has nothing. He said, what do we do now? And I said, well, all I can tell you is, you better thank God it isn't February the 1st, because you would have a problem.
That's it.
Because it's over there unless we as a community of hospices, because if you think about it, we all one. The story these ladies tell is in every one of our hospices abroad. It is a strand of faith that we all embrace. So the key for us is that we must not sit idly by and allow this without being tested or challenged. I've always said, I don't mind losing a good fight, as long as I fought. Fight, and this is an oxymoron, to the death. Thank you so much.
Oh, I see what
Well, I really didn't plan on, I feel like I've kind of walked into something here that I may not be quite prepared for, because this issue, to me, has become very personal to me. I'm one of 14 kids, and when my baby sister was diagnosed with cancer, none of us knew how to deal with it. You know, we lost our mom and our dad, and I've had aunts that we've taken home and taken care of, but they didn't have cancer. And until you see how cancer really ravages a person, and a person that is close to you, you really don't recognize how much other help that you need. And I was just listening to you about your 13-year-old son. I can't even fathom that. And my sister, she was 49 years old, and I'm sort of close to all of those others. We have a big family, so we have a tendency with different age groups to not be as close as others. I wound up being the second middle child, number 8. So I got an opportunity to have a relationship with both ends of my family. If you could imagine, stair-step kids. And but my baby sister, you know, she was always one that was had a lot of energy, and even up until the day that she died, her attitude was just totally different about life. You know, she wasn't down or sad. I never did see her that way. But a big part of that was because of the end-of-life care that she got. She didn't have time to think about those things because this hospice care that Dr. Cox provided for us, it was just miraculous for the whole family. Can you imagine herding just a drove of cats? There's 14 of us, and everybody loved our little sister, and everybody had an idea as to how we were to take care of her at the end of her life. So we never could get on the same page. And just so happened, I had met Dr. Cox probably several years prior. And I told my family, I said, well, you know, there's this thing, this hospice care, and I know a guy from Mansfield or Coshada that is involved in it, so let's try to get them involved and try to give us an idea of how we're going to take care of this, because nobody had an idea of how to deal with it, period. And here we all are mostly educated family members with various college degrees, but we could not deal with this situation. Without all the knowledge that we've had and the experience that we've had, we could not really understand how we were going to deal with seeing our sister wasting away, finding out in February that she did have cancer. She lived in one of my rent houses. She was a teacher. And she had gotten away from a teaching profession that she loved. And I noticed that her health was starting to change. And I kept asking, I said, you need to go to the doctor. Something is wrong with you. She kept denying it. So she finally went in February. They diagnosed her with cancer. And by July, she couldn't hardly take care of herself at all. So we had to all get involved with this. And it was really a very draining situation. She kept saying that she wanted to go home. We live on a farm, a 100-acre farm, and she wanted to go back home. And we knew that when she wanted to go back home, that would be the end of it. So we allowed her to go back home, and I have several brothers still, a couple of brothers that are still at home, and we talked to them and said, well, look, she wanted to go back home. So they said, well, let her come back home. And so she was there. The small town that we're from in West Carroll Parish couldn't really take care of her needs. And so we dealt with it, and we scraped money together to try to do the extra things. But it wasn't until we talked to Dr. Cox, he said, well, look, boy, he said, I know that y'all have not dealt with this situation. He could tell. We put him on the telephone. You had, I have 10 brothers and sisters left. And we were all bombarding him with all these things. And he just calmed us all down and said, this is what we can do. And when he said that, at least we had sense enough to know that this person knew what they were talking about, and they would give her the best of care, and you know, he never asked for anything. That never did come out of his mouth. That if you all can't afford it, we'll take care of it. I mean, that came out of his mouth. He said, well, look, we'll work with you. If there's any benefits that she has, we'll work through those too, because it's a nightmare to work through benefits. I mean, it is a complete nightmare. So he said, well, I'll work through all of this. He gave us the steps, and we had several conference calls. It was coordinated through my office. And when that happened, there was just a sigh of relief that came over my family, and he became the hero. Because we were able to go through one person that we could depend on, that we held responsible for her life in the end. Although we knew that if we had taken care of it, it would probably have been so much worse. And here she is, 49 years old, has a 10-year-old autistic child that we have to decide, what are we going to do with him? A set of twins. One was pregnant just 3 years out of high school. How were they going to deal with their mother's death? You know? And so we were so troubled. We just didn't know what to do. And I'm going to tell you, this was a godsend. We prayed. And when I suggested that Dr. Cox come in with hospice, I had no idea what they really did. You know, all I know they dealt with people at the end of their lives. That's pretty much all I knew about hospice. But I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to end with this because I don't like to bring those memories back. That it's worth every penny and more that we could try to provide to do this, because I really don't think that they are paid what they're worth. There are a few things in the state that I know that we seem to get our money's worth, but in this situation here, you get more than your money's worth in some. And that's the story that you're going to have to bring. Many people know that the governor and I don't see eye to eye to a lot of things. And if you talk about a death panel, this is what I consider a death panel where you allow people who, even in their young age, or whether they're young or old, to not give them the decency of having a respectable end-of-life experience. I don't know anything else that you can do more for a human being than to do that. With that, I'm gonna leave it because it's still an emotional deal, and my wife tells me all the time, she says, you know, you've been in this political business a long time, but you just cannot handle sensitive issues like, death and stuff. I said, well, yeah, that's just part of me, but sometimes people do understand that. So again, I appreciate the opportunity.
And after that note, I would say this. I'm new to the legislature, and I'm a soldier. I've been a soldier all my life. It seems like that's what my mom says. My wife said, I love it. But I came back here and I served people. This to me is not serving people. The objective is that, I've seen young men and women die for this country so that we could live in dignity and die in dignity. But when this seems to be hurting the weakest of the weak. And as Roy said, we have to do something to help, whatever it is. I'm not pleased with it. And I hope that we can come to some understanding as we go back down We go back, I've been called back into the health and welfare session on the 24th of this month. And hopefully we will discuss part of this as an issue. You guys will have your candlelight visual. Well, look, you do some things. I've had friends that had hospitals, and I watched my brother come down and rub their feet. I know that seems kind of, I mean, I told him he has a job that I will not compete for. It is, I mean, every person I lost that died for the country, they live here. I don't know how y'all handle it. But I think maybe we need to get some folks from down there to come down and walk with you. Until you walk a mile in your shoes, you really don't know how it is. But I think, and based on what I see, and we must get the facts together, that this is going to cost us more than we save in this matter. So I would ask that you get those issues and things together. There are so many stories, success stories, and how you guys become heroes in people's lives. You give them spiritual counseling if they want to. You give them counseling. You take care of their needs when their pain is involved. I just had shoulder replacement surgery, and trust me, I understand pain management. I have a new perspective about being in the hospital. I have a new perspective. My brother was there with me, trust me. And so care is so important to someone who can't get it. Let me tell you how important it was just to give me a drink of water. I so appreciate it. Now, I know that seems trivial, but until you can't do it yourself, you don't understand. So, with that in hand, well, my good friend Roy, I mean, Roy has his sister going through this, and I've had others go through this, friends, brothers. We look forward to working with you the best that we can, and we'll be talking with the administration, I'm quite sure. They don't always agree with us, but when the poor is affected, because what happened, and I hear this from each one of you, there was no money left. You had nowhere to turn. If we are one thing that we should do, the Bible says that the poor will always be with us. And it is our responsibility to help take care of the poor. And with that, I think I will relinquish it back to you guys.
Would any of the rest of y'all like to make a comment on other providers?
I will. After your speech, or your presentation, or your son, I have a 14-year-old. Emotional. I come from a world of Smith. I'm new to hospice, about a year, 2 years now going on. I have a great DON who has shown me the passion and the love that our patients get. So to take that away from this community would just be, I couldn't even imagine it now. A couple of years ago, I probably could have. I couldn't imagine it now. I couldn't imagine having to say to some of our patients, or could be patients, we can't take care of you because you have no way, we just can't. And that young lady here, I can't remember her name, the $135 a day is nothing compared to what these patients receive. So to say we can't afford to do that, you can't afford not to do that. I do know the cost of a hospital stay, of an ER visit, of an ambulance transfer, of medications, of medical equipment. I know what those costs are. So financially, which is so small compared to the big picture of what hospice provides, that small, insignificant piece, which is what is driving this decision, it has to be overlooked for what hospice provides to these people, but also financially, it is a huge mistake that this state needs to address, because it is the 10% that need it the most, but it is also that 10% that will cause this state to drive up their costs drastically in healthcare. So you can look at it financially, and fortunately for me, I have a great team, and I work with a great team in this community that shows me the passionate side, the care, when these patients need it the very, very most. And to say that you can't get that anymore would just be detrimental to so many people. And a step back for us as people to say, we can't do this for you anymore. So I hope that our leaders, and I say we all pray for our leaders, to go and convince those that make these decisions that this could be one of the most devastating and heartless decisions that they could probably ever make in terms of how to lead this state to a better financial level of security. So thank you all for your time, and thank you all, everyone in this room, and to all the caregivers that are out there that aren't in this room, that we don't know what they go through. I don't know. Luckily, I mean, I have wonderful people who remind me every now and then when I too, just like you, I'm sorry I forget your name, but we have to figure out how to pay, we got to figure out something. And I love the fact that I'm looking at it that way, but I'm always reminded what we're really here for. So when we get those non-funded patients who have no way to pay for what they need, we are reminded, and we do contribute back, all of us do, I know we do, to those who have nothing, but we can only do so much. So we're doing our piece, and we have to keep doing that. And we've got to have the support of Louisiana Medicaid to continue to provide the care that these patients need. Thank you.
Thank you. It's the right thing, it's the good thing. You're standing on the good side. Stand strong.
Representative
Be our
Cox,
voice.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
the numbers that we were given, 3.3 million
Yeah,
in a $32 billion budget,
yeah.
those numbers don't match. 3.3 million is, I mean, yeah, that's a drop in the bucket, that's a drop in the pool, okay? And then 10.3 million, they just don't match. Those numbers, if you're looking at it from a monetary standpoint, when you gentlemen go to argue the point, if they don't understand what we've expressed here at these tables about the care that's given and the love that's shared through hospice, they understand numbers. And if you take the amount of Medicaid patients at 10% times $22,000, those numbers don't match.
They know that, right?
Well, I agree with you
Organization
there.
has noticed that too.
I sit on appropriations, and you're right, they don't match. We do have a $25 billion budget, and $3.3 million is a drop in the bucket for monies that we actually pretty much waste on trivial things. I just think it's just basically a statement that's being made by this administration. If they want to prioritize their spending, I think this is one area that they could look more into and find the value. And as you said, if these people they're going to have to go somewhere. And the emergency room, more than likely, is where they will have to go. It would be easy to justify the cost. So that's not.
And I'll share this little story with you. Just the other night, we had one of our nurses who was newly employed with us, and she doesn't have benefits. She was diagnosed with respiratory infection. She got a little bit worse, so she needed to go to LSU ER. She was in the LSU ER for 12 hours. And the only reason it was that short was one of the ladies who worked there realized, hey, I know her, let me go ahead and try to get her back. 12 hours. So we're going to clog that ER up even more with patients who are going to triage even heavily or heavier into that ER and not be able to help with other patients.
And going back to the care and the fact that if you're in a nursing home or getting home health, you're only going to get so many visits. Jordan's Crossing Hospice was there to anticipate Brian's needs. When he was no longer able to swallow pills, they had liquid and sublingual morphine and Ativan. And when he wasn't even able to swallow liquids anymore, they had fentanyl patches, they had compounded ointment creams that controlled anxiety and pain. And he was able to die in a peaceful environment surrounded by the people that he loved and his family. And it was a beautiful experience, even as sad as it was.
In death, he died with dignity.
Exactly.
I heard my brother say that. He died beautifully. And coming from someone who was there, he died beautifully. And I was like, man, you know, I was in war, so it doesn't equate. I don't know how you died beautifully, but I'm understanding what you're saying. So by the passion and the care that that person peacefully left with peace and dignity, and the family was not all wrapped up like Roy said. It brought you guys together. So,
People don't realize hospices, they're prepared. They know what they're doing. We don't know what we're doing.
Well, you
But there's
know,
nothing more comfortable than talking to someone that goes, we got this.
Exactly.
Let me touch on that. What happens in our medical community, we have levels of care. First of all, you have the hospital, which involves the ER and so forth, and the admissions. Secondly, you have step-down skill units that are designed for a specific mission. Thirdly, you have home health and other agencies along that fan. And finally, you have that fourth level of care, which is hospice. If this is not administrative or kept intact appropriately, you're going to drive up those more expensive level of cares fairly easy. You have to look at this in such a way that fits in those categories in order to make sure we maintain a balanced budget and so forth. So if you skew that process, you have now driven the economical aspect of that care immensely. So this care is